Started. Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to another session of Azure Power Lunch. Um, Let me share my screen. There we go. And folks, if you don't mind, if you are not asking a question, if you can mute yourself, I will really appreciate. Thank you. Um, so today's topic of discussion is how you secure your Azure resources with Service Endpoints. And by the way, Service Endpoint have been there for some time. And some of the Azure service updates. So first of all, if you don't know me, a quick introduction about myself. I'm an Azure Solution Architect with Microsoft in the South Central region. Um, so let's moving on. Let's quickly go into uh, some of the service updates first. So let's go here. And if you want to know about what's coming, you may want to bookmark this page. This is let's go in here. This is the page, Azure Service Updates. Um, it gets updated with all the new things that's coming up, so you can uh, keep yourself up to date. One of the things is uh, there are some enhancements of how containers are being monitored. So that's something new. This is all as Microsoft is going all in with containers, Kubernetes, so that there are enhancements in monitoring um, those services, and those are some of the things which have just came out. Another thing which is not directly related to you know in terms of product update, but this is fast track for Azure. So if you are one of those customer which meets this criteria, like you are working on some of the Azure, or you have an Azure workload that kind of is equivalent to $5,000 a month of Azure consumption, you may be eligible to get a fast track for Azure. And if or one of your customers, so that's something to keep in mind. um, you know, um, so that's something that you may want to keep an eye on. You or your customer may be eligible for getting fast track help. So this is once again, this is something, and these are the approved workload, DC migration, Linux on Azure. These are some of those approved workloads, and they will help you get that workload fast track to Azure. Another update, it is around text analytics in cognitive services. As you know, cognitive services, our SaaS offering, where you don't have to know anything about machine learning or AI, and we will provide these services uh, kind of that gives you AI or things like uh, image recognition, all of that on demand, and that is available to you through a SaaS service. So this is basically one of that service, text analytics. What it does is it looks through the text and find out what are some of these entities. For example, a person, location, organization. So help you analyze that, and probably will one of those session we will take a look at that in a more deeper way. But that's some of the updates, and if, as I said, for more updates you may want to take a look at the Azure updates, find out what are some of the other updates that are making their way. So let's go back to our topic of discussion. First of all, if you look at different Azure networking services, and this is some of the main core services from Azure networking, this is on the So you can divide them into like 4 areas: protecting your network, a hybrid connectivity, monitoring your network, and delivering applications. So this is on the protection side, how you protect your network, how you protect your assets which are deployed in Azure or services that you're using from Azure. So virtual network endpoints that they have been released, they have been in um, GA for quite some time, and there are some new enhancements which have been made, which kind of prompt me to take a look, to have a fresh look at service endpoint. So first of all, what are service endpoint? So as you know, in Azure, there are PaaS services like web apps. There are services like data services like SQL, Cosmos DB, or you have storage accounts which have public endpoints. So customers who are accessing those services from their resources running inside virtual networks have often have concerns that these services are available on public endpoints. There is no way to turn off those public endpoints, and what happens if somebody somehow get a key to those service and access those over internet. So what service endpoint do is they tie in a service to a particular uh, subnet or a set of subnets. So remember, so in general, or kind of in simple terms, you are now tying a certain set of services or a particular service. And when I'm talking about service, I'm talking about the entire, all the resources in that service, like SQL or Azure SQL or storage, to a set of subnets. And the way you do it is you go to the subnet and you make it, uh, enable it to support service endpoints. And then at that point, from that subnet, you can access, when you access those resources, basically you are now going directly to those resources instead of going over the internet. And then you can go on the resource side and lock it to that subnet. So it's a two-way process, and basically set a firewall on that resources. So once you enable that on the subnet side, now you can go on the resource side and put a firewall and say, okay, only resources from this particular subnet access that particular resource. So that's kind of a very powerful way to control that. It doesn't give that particular service a private endpoint, but what it does is it locks that service, so you only resources in those subnets can access that particular service resource. So for example, if there's SQL database, Azure SQL database, you can, folks, please, if you don't mind, can you please mute your phone? So what you can do is, for example, so basically you can go to a SQL database and lock it, put a service endpoint on it, and then that way you will be able to access it only from the subnet, which is where that service endpoint relation has been established. Okay, we are gonna see a few things. We're gonna see a quick demo how we enable on a storage service, and then we're gonna see how it makes it kind of how we do it for a web app, and how it plays out in a relation of application gateway securing a multi-tenant web application. Okay, so let's quickly go into the Azure portal. By the way, any questions?
Yes, would on-premise be able to access that resource using private IP So if I have a VPN
No,
tunnel to the VNet, no?
no, it does not. So
Okay.
this is something, this is basically, this is more on the private link that is kind of is coming, but that's a one of the limitation. You cannot access it. It doesn't give the resource, the Azure resource, a private IP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. So first of all, what you want to do is you want to whitelist your um, uh, subnet. So you go on to your subnet, for example, I can go in here and I can say I wanna um, oh, what is going on? So you see demo blues. Okay, let's try this again. Service endpoints. Okay, I'm gonna go in here. Service. Very interesting. Uh, okay, so let's start with virtual networks and let's see if we can try one more time. So I'm gonna go into this subnet, and then I'm gonna go into this particular subnet and try to set up. Okay, so right now there is one service endpoint set up, and if I want, I can set up a web or SQL or service bus or key vault. I mean, these are all the services which are supported. So what you want to do is go into your network, go into that subnet. Let's say there is a VM running which needs to access a storage account. And in that case, you just go in there, turn that on, and just save the setting. And at that point, what will happen is um, your VNet is now enabled for service, and that subnet is now enabled for service endpoints. Okay, so this is one way. This is one side of the things. Now you're saying from this subnet, I can access all the resources, all the storage resources. And just keep in mind, what will happen is that once you enable it, it will use for any firewall, it will start using the private IP of the in the subnet instead of the public IP of the VMs. Okay, so that's something you wanna keep in mind. And once you save it, save the setting. And now what you wanna do is go back to the storage account. So let's go back to our storage account. I think, where was the storage account? Yes, so let's go to our storage account. We have one storage account, and I'm not going to do anything. I just want to show you. So there is a storage account called NZ, this one. And this storage account, I have set up a static website. Okay, and this static website currently is accessible from anywhere. So if I go in here and open a browser, I should be able to access this website, because right now this resource is accessible from anywhere. I mean, there's no firewall on that particular resource. So one end, we have a subnet which we are opening up to a storage account, and on the other hand, we are going to have a storage account that we want to kind of uh, want to lock to that subnet. Okay, so let's go back to our storage account. And by the way, this is our VM, which is running in that subnet, the one where we turned on, service endpoints for storage. So as you can see, I can query it. I mean, this web page is opening up. So let me go in here, and I don't want anybody else to access it. I want only that VM to access that particular information. Okay. So I go in here and I have to go into firewalls and virtual networks, and I can turn on selected networks. And by the way, you can do many things here. You can turn on firewall for certain IP addresses, like you can whitelist the IP address for portal access. I mean, your personal IP address. You can allow trusted Microsoft services to access it, all of that. And this is the one which is what we are going to do. We're going to go in here. We're going to pick up a, virtual network. It's going to say, hey, you know, only one of those subnet has this enable, the other one don't. And by the way, if you select those, it will enable service endpoint on those, but we are not going to select that. We're just going to select this and we're going to say add. And at that point, we are going to just save this. So now what we have done is we have set up a firewall where um, we are saying that only this subnet can access this resource. So this resource is now locked. So if you try to access it from anywhere else, that will not work this particular um, except this particular subnet. So just to prove that point, let's go back there. This is the site that we access. Let's close it. Let's try to access it again. Open a browser and let's try to do it again. Let's see if we can access it because it's a storage hosted website. Okay, so the requested content doesn't exist. So basically it doesn't find that website. And that's what we wanted. And let's see if we can access it from that particular VM, which is living in the same subnet. So this VM is living in the same subnet, and we go in here. Yeah, it's still, we are able to access that. Okay. So this is that side of service endpoint. Service endpoint has just been made available for web app, and that was announced kind of, I'm not sure why, very quietly. Not many people know about it. So why it is important. Okay, so I have, let me show you. Yes, so I have a app gateway. GW. Yes. Okay, so I have an application gateway. And if you know, application gateway is Microsoft first party layer 7 gateway device. It has, firewall capabilities as well. And it is sitting in this VNet, NZ demo management default subnet. So if I go into this subnet, I want to show you something that I have done in in terms of service endpoint. I have enabled Microsoft.web sub. So what it does is now I can put firewall on my web application, multi-tenant web application, or basically lock those apps only from this particular to be accessed only from this particular subnet. And what is in this subnet? In this subnet, I'm running my gateway. So what that means? It means that all traffic will come through the gateway to my web app or whatever web apps I have, behind this firewall I want to put in. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Let's just make sure.
Any question?
Okay. I just want to make sure this is something we've been asking for
Sorry,
a long,
you
long
may,
time.
you might wanna mute your phone.
Uh,
Sorry. So basically, what it allows you to do is it allows you to kind of put a firewall. Put it in the subnet, and then lock that subnet for those web apps, and in that way, your web apps will only be accessible from that subnet. So all traffic you bring to your firewall or your application gateway, it will go through the gateway to the multi-tenant app. So that's how we'll do it. So that's I want to show it here. For example, this is how I'm enabling. And this is a new capability in Service Endpoint. Service Endpoint for for multi-tenant web apps, they just came out maybe a month ago. So this is Microsoft.web. I'm just kind of enabling that service endpoint on this gateway. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this is my web application. This is my web application. It's a it's running on, it's not an ASC or anything, app service environment. It is running, as you can see, in a multi-tenant web apps S1 plan. And I'm going to go into the networking piece. Let's go into networking and let's go into configure access restriction. And as you can see, I have set up access restriction where I am saying that, come on, I am locking this to this particular subnet. So now I'm saying the traffic can only come from that subnet to this particular um, web app. That's all. And that same thing I'm doing for the service control manager or Kudu website. So both of these are locked in. So what will happen is I have assigned a custom domain name to my website. So let's say I can uh, go in here and try to open it. So this is now it's opening the site. So this custom domain name is not assigned to the web app. It is assigned to to my app gateway, and I can show it to you. So if I go back here, okay, hold on a second. Where I was, we can go to the gateway. That's fine. So if I go into this gateway, and this gateway, you will see in the listener. So this is the NZ demo listener. That's where I have set up this site. And I'm just using, a host file to simulate a DNS name and all the certificates. So this is basically, and this is the listener. And if we go back into the backend pools, this is the app service backend pool. So as you can see, it is calling NZHW. So point is we have set this up, and now since we have locked this website um, to through this gateway, if I go into this website, so let me go in here and I'm gonna go to that website and try to um, browse it. You see, I get 403. It says that your web app is stopped or I'm not able to access it. So that's how you can now truly log in. So you have a virtual appliance. Um, it can be app gateway or any other ones running in a subnet. You can lock that subnet to your multi-tenant app and through this service endpoints. And now uh, nobody can access your traffic except through that gateway. That's it. All the public access to your website is now blocked. So you're it's not truly a private IP, but somehow you can kind of locking it and doing it um, through the gateway. So any questions?
Does this web app, when you set up the service endpoint for the web app, does that set up the VNet integration piece too? Because the old way was the VNet integration.
Okay, the VNet integration, what we have right now is from the web app to the VNet. Basically, this is from VNet to the web app. So there are two sides of the integration. The one we have right now, when you integrate a web app to a VNet, it is basically from that web app to that VNet. So you have something in web app, your page, it can access a database running on a VM, for example, or on-prem through that integration. Okay, this one is basically taking your VNet or a subnet in your VNet and tying it to that particular web app. So the traffic will only, I mean, you're locking it to that particular subnet. So this
So
web app, yeah, go ahead.
is all it's doing on the web app side is adding that access restriction?
Yes, that's right.
So it's
But
not
you
doing
have to,
any other configuration on that side. It's just
no,
because that access restriction's been there for a while too.
oh, it is, but
Yeah.
it was there for a while, but it was only IP address range. It was not subnet. So that's the difference. For example, this IP address, let's go into app services.
Right. Yeah.
So let's go in here and okay. So if we go in here, this access restriction, or what we call, let's go into networking, configure access restriction. So this access restriction that you have, let's add a new rule. So it will ask you, do you want to do IPv4? It was there, IPv6 of course is new, and this virtual network. That's what service endpoint now brings in. Okay, before it was just IPv4 or IPv6, but this virtual network, that's something that is just announced.
Right. Okay.
Because
Yeah, I recall having to put a whole subnet of IP address
yes,
range.
exactly. So, but with this one, you can exactly tie in subnets and make it truly, where you don't have to update that IP address range or I mean, if your system or scales up or scales down or something like that.
So
Okay.
with this, there is no reason to do the VNet integration because that allows it anyways, right?
No. Once again, VNet integration, it will not allow you to have your something that is in your website access your on-prem, access the resources in the subnet. This
So
is
with Service
locked.
Endpoint, it's one way. It's to the web
Yes,
app. Okay, it's not the
yes.
other way too.
No,
Okay.
it is not. So that's exactly. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. That is only from subnet to the app, not from the app to the subnet. So that's very important. So we have 1 more minute. I wanted to go over the policies as well, but this is something which is currently in preview. This is service endpoint policies. So service endpoint, they kind of lock access to Azure resources from a particular subnet. But just keep in mind, you can access the resources of, I mean, all the resources of that type. So for example, all the storage account from that subnet. Of course, you can go in there to the other side and set a firewall, but that's cumbersome. You have to do it for every storage resource in that case. What policies allow you to do is you can say, okay, I'm going to take these resources or these storage accounts and these SQL data. Right now, it is only for storage accounts. These storage accounts, and that's the only storage accounts that you can access from those VNets. So that's kind of further clamp down of what is can be accessed from certain subnets. So this is kind of a put on resource restriction in a sense that resource instance restriction, I should say, on the what can be accessed from the subnet. So this is you can use it together, but currently they are in public preview and they are only available for storage. That's it, no other resource. So just look at this diagram with this policy. Let's say you have two storage accounts, A and B, and now with this policy, you can say, I'm just going to allow account A for, and what you do is once you have that policy, you apply it to um, certain accounts, I mean, to, certain subnets. So policy will have resources and then you will attach it to subnets to apply these policy onto that subnets. Any questions? Okay, folks. If there are no questions, thank you very much for joining, and hopefully you can join next week for another Azure Power Lunch session. Thank you.